Well, good morning, my friends. It's Carpo here. It's about 9 a.m. in Portland time here. And I don't usually make videos in the morning. It's actually, I wake up inspired to share ideas, but I don't end up making them until later, if I make one at all. And I thought, I got up and I was usually doing my usual morning reading, morning research, reading articles, and seeing what's going on in the world. And I came across this article, and it was talking. I was actually seeking it out. Addiction to righteousness, or addiction to, um, control, things like that. It seems that we all are well aware that there's an addiction to money out there, but I don't really think it's money, and I think that's misunderstood. It's not the money that people really desire. In fact, most people who hoard money don't do it for the money itself, but rather for the power that it brings them. But you can't really blame people for being addicted to something that helps you survive. In other words, beyond a certain point, money is pretty much useless to an individual other than just bringing more problems. But for some people, they yearned for that, and it was so satisfying to feel like they had what they needed in life that they're continuously searching for that high again. This is no different than a heroin junkie who continually is searching for that same high. To complain a heroin addiction to a money addiction might seem far fetched, but really they're one and the same. It's neurochemistry, it's the way that our brains react to environmental stimuli. And some people have it much worse than others. But there are many different types of addictions that people can have, or compulsions, just for that natural, dopamine rush. Everything from gambling, which is a very big one, racing, which I guess would be a form of gambling, but it can be risky depending on what you're racing. I mean, if you're racing, Matchbox cars compared to, stock cars, that's a different story. But it's risk taking in general, and risk taking is something that gives people a natural dopamine rush, and they can become addicted to that in the sense that I'd like to clarify first. Just because you use something or do something all the time doesn't mean you are addicted to it. It could be considered a habit, but addiction by definition means that it's something that holds you back from leading a normal life or the life that you would like to live, or harms you or others around you. So I guess if you're taking risks doing, say, base jumping, that might be, or flying in a wingsuit, people might consider that something to aspire to. They think, wow, this person's brave. They're jumping off mountains, or even climbing to the top of mountains. People who want to climb Everest or rock climbing, it's dangerous. People put their lives at risk doing it. Yet others look to it and go, wow, that's awesome, because it's something that is considered freeing, whereas a person who dies from an overdose is considered, oh, they're a druggie. It's I don't know. I look similarly to a person who hits a cliff with a wingsuit. I think that sucks, but I don't really feel sorry for them. They died doing what they love, and they knew the risks. We all take risks. So it all comes down to that desire for that neurochemistry, that dopamine rush, the adrenaline rush. And sports is another big one, where not only the players are involved, but the participants, the spectators, become just as involved, and they can have such a dopamine rush. I mean, people get into fistfights when their team loses. I mean, it's crazy, but that's part of what fascinates me about human beings. As I said, money, the addiction to money is generally an addiction to power. And the addiction to power is an addiction to control, because of a loss of control over our own lives. And this is something I've observed. I cannot ever confirm or deny anything that other people think, because I'm an individual. But through what I've seen, people continuously yearn for more and more money, can be very unstable deep down inside and have a very low self-esteem. Therefore, they think that money will bring them a more self-esteem. So this isn't, of course, about money. This is about what happens when people have no power and they feel like they have no money, no way to get money. They seek out righteousness, and often this comes in the form of trolling online. It's a perfect example. Trolling, people and getting it gives people a rush to get a reaction out of others. And it's kind of a reactionary posting, things like that. It's not just with trolling with posts, it's well orchestrated and organized videos and titles that are designed to get people infuriated. It happens in the news, it happens in alternative media, in smaller YouTube channels, bigger ones. Anything to get the clicks, anything to get those likes. Because those likes translate into, yep, more dopamine rush. Wow. And look, I'm sitting here telling you this, but it's not like I'm immune to it. I have my own addictions. I've always had addictions. And I guess, mostly they haven't held me back, so maybe they're compulsions or habits. But I've learned how to handle them and harness that. If I find myself becoming too righteous because, a lot of people like something I had to say, I don't let that go to my head. I think, how can I step outside that box a little more and speak about more? This is why I cover a wide variety of topics. When people say, you shouldn't talk about politics, you should just stick to herbs, or whatever they think that I talk about. Just because I don't talk about all these things doesn't mean I don't think about them all the time. But I think that the mental aspect of how our brain handles the things we do, sports, hiking, camping, risk-taking, gambling in general, and even trolling online, is something that we need to reel in and consider. And one aspect of this is my dopamine rush harming someone else. The ultimate, I guess, extreme example would be a heroin junkie they enjoy being high all the time, but everyone around them is constantly taking care of them, bailing them out of jail, helping them through treatment, suffering and working hard to take care of that person, so that person becomes a burden on their family, on their friends, on everyone. That's why it's an addiction. If a person just smokes cannabis all the time and has for 30 years, say like I have, you could consider it an addiction if you want, but it doesn't negatively adversely affect my life in an extreme way. There have been times in the past where I had to quit, and I quit for 2 years. It was no problem, cold turkey. I didn't go through any crazy withdrawals or anything like that. But cannabis is very unique and different from other substances in that way. Most drugs we consume have a lot more dramatic withdrawals after a person quits for a long time. So anyhow, the reason why people continue using some substances is either for maintenance, because they enjoy the feeling, or to continuously chase that high, which is that dopamine rush, which you can never achieve. You never get to the top. So when it comes to abuse of substances, that's one thing. When it comes to abuse of your verbal skills, such as trolling or harassing people online, for example, it often comes down to a desire to be seen, a desire to be heard. If there's anything I have noticed, it's the people with the most obnoxious, rude things to say are usually the people who have nothing to lose by saying it. In other words, people who figure it's like a kid who cusses at his parents so he'll get noticed. Any attention, even bad attention, is still attention. And so a desire to be seen means that in order to overcome many of these obstacles, it's very simple. We need to respect and recognize each other's work. And I don't mean your job. I mean the things that you've done, the things that you've tried to do. It's important that we recognize that in each other, in our family and friends. I'll be the first to admit that I'm really bad about giving compliments to people. I feel cheesy doing so. I feel like people don't take me seriously if I say it. So generally, I don't compliment people on... I try to, but I'm trying to work at it is the point. To say, wow, that is really amazing. Even if it's maybe not that amazing. Giving people the type of a boost that they need to move forward in their own lives. But if we're criticizing each other's work, if we're saying what you're doing is a waste of time, or your art is stupid, or the things you say are dumb and you're wrong, it's not solving anything. It's just making us feel better about ourselves for a short period. But I'd like to ask, is that something that we carry around for a long time? Can we really gain anything by being rude or spiteful to others. And I think in the long term, it does us more damage to our own personal psyche than it could ever give us a value of being right or righteous. I've done more than my share of arguing, and sure, I've said things that maybe were misunderstood, but in general, I just try to be a good person. I care about others. I care about others' addictions, others' needs, and it's hard to sometimes vocalize that. And I think that we just need to care about each other just a little bit more. And you see this more in smaller communities, but as we get bigger and bigger as a nation and a world, we tend to cast each other under the bus and make assumptions about one another. Nowadays, if a person makes one statement, they get labeled with 1,000 different labels. You must be one of these people. God, it's happened to me so many times I can't even count. Just the other day, somebody said, "Oh, I haven't been to your channel in a while, but I saw a bunch of your hateful comments on another video. Just why? Why were you saying all these hateful things?" And they claimed that I said something like, safe spaces make children gay and a bunch of stuff. And then I realized that in the end that the person was just saying, no, you said this one thing. This was something I mentioned a while back of the label of cisgender and how I think it's a ridiculous label. And the person took that one thing and made all these other assumptions about what I must believe and think. And I thought, this is a perfect example of how assuming shit about one another makes us look silly. And so my point there was it's hard for people to even have an opinion anymore and speak up without being afraid of being attacked on a bunch of different levels. So it makes them even more resistant to each other. And then there's this constant feeding off of the argument. But I want to stick to the dopamine point. So I think I made what I needed to make. There's a lot going on in the brain with neurochemistry. And we all have different varying levels and functionality of our different brain parts, if you will, and different levels of these hormones and these neurochemicals. So, and these are adjusted by substance use or by our mood, by our well-being, by how much sleep we get, the right food. So there's no one size fits all. We just have to give each other a little space. Sometimes we're feeling a little better, sometimes we're not. And we just remember that we're all addicted to something. And what inspired me to even make this was I thought about people who are completely anti-drug. And not just the ones who don't use any substances, but the ones who have to tell everybody about it. It's like the person who quit smoking and for the rest of their life all they talk about is how bad cigarettes smell and they can't stand smokers and people shouldn't smoke and it's going to kill you. It's like a person's done one thing and so they instantly focus on what everybody else is doing. It's more important that we just deal with our own shit. Because there might be an addiction to righteousness that takes the place of that addiction to, say, nicotine. Yeah, being human's hard. We do our best. Talk to y'all later. Have a wonderful day.